After the abortion, we became strangers never to meet again. After my mother-in-law, who had been bedridden for over a decade, passed away, I, having lost my last value in my 60s, was kicked out by the father and son and sent to a nursing home, all because when I was young, my husband said a woman's greatest achievement was her family. So at the peak of my career, I gave up the company's opportunity for an overseas assignment to stay home full-time, caring for my bedridden mother-in-law until her last days and meticulously tutoring my son to help him get into a prestigious university. Little did I know that Ezra Jiang's childhood sweetheart, Lena Ji, had long been acting as Mrs. Jiang in the company, and their son had already tacitly acknowledged their relationship. I was the only one kept in the dark, foolishly pitying her as a lonely girl with no one to rely on, treating her like a younger sister. How pitiful, how laughable. Fortunately, even the heavens thought I had been wronged, granting me a chance to be reborn. When I received the email from the company about sending me to expand the Malaysian market, decades of my past life flashed through my mind like a fleeting dream. Yes, no one knows I've been reborn. It seems even the heavens couldn't bear to watch and decided to give me another chance to choose. Without hesitation, I clicked confirm and sent the email back to HR. I took the pregnancy test report from the drawer, tore it into pieces, and threw it in the trash. I opened my phone, booked an appointment with that doctor from last time, and planned to terminate the pregnancy this weekend. In this lifetime, I will never have another child with Ezra Jiang. In my past life, this child was the gift I gave Ezra Jiang for our first wedding anniversary, because when we first got married, he held me tenderly in his arms. Myra, let's have a child together, a child that carries both our bloodlines. Let's watch them grow up slowly, just like our love. At that time, my career was just taking off, and the opportunity to be sent abroad was extremely rare. My boss was a strong woman who believed in my abilities. She overruled all objections and decisively gave the opportunity directly to me. Yet I failed her, giving up at the last moment, just because the night before, Ezra Jiang held me from behind, rested his chin on my shoulder, and said he didn't want to give up on our first child like this. He said having a child would make our family complete. Job opportunities will come again in the future, but if we give up on this child, the next one won't be him anymore. At 12 weeks pregnant, my morning sickness became increasingly severe, to the point where I couldn't keep anything down. Even a sip of water would make me vomit. My weight quickly dropped from 100 jin to 90 jin, and I could only rely on hospital-administered nutrient injections and 4 fluids to sustain the pregnancy. In this condition, I couldn't work normally and had to take a long leave, handing over my responsibilities to my assistant. My mother stayed with me in the hospital through the difficult pregnancy, and we finally welcomed a baby boy at 38 weeks, Jiang Huiting. Upon hearing I'd given birth to a son, my mother-in-law, who had been claiming illness, hurried from our hometown to the city to care for her first grandson. She brought along Lena Ji, the daughter of Ezra Jiang's aunt. Ezra Jiang doted on this younger sister, saying that as an orphan with no one to rely on, she was too pitiful, and from now on he would be her support. I sympathized with Lena Ji for losing her parents at a young age and treated her like my own sister, always buying her clothes or cosmetics whenever I got some for myself. Little did I know that she and Ezra Jiang weren't actually cousins, but childhood sweethearts who grew up together. My mother-in-law, having lived in the countryside for years, didn't understand modern scientific parenting. Though I tried to be accommodating, conflicts were inevitable. To avoid escalating conflicts, I always talked to Ezra Jiang, hoping he could persuade his mother. At first, he patiently comforted me, saying that older people struggle to accept modern ideas and urged me to be more tolerant and less petty. Later, after repeated discussions, he emphasized how hard his mother had worked to raise him and how much she had suffered, finally getting the chance to enjoy life in the city with her son, so he asked me not to be so nitpicky. Eventually, it became about how hard he worked to support the family and how I couldn't even manage the household properly, questioning what use I was. At that time, I had been unemployed for 2 years due to company layoffs, and it happened to coincide with my child's middle school entrance exams. I decided to focus entirely on tutoring my child and planned to look for a job after the exams were over. Unexpectedly, just as my son finished his middle school entrance exams, my mother-in-law fell ill. Ezra Jiang said that since my mother-in-law was getting older, he wasn't comfortable leaving her alone in the hospital with just a caregiver. Since our child's exams were over and we weren't short on money, he suggested that he would handle external matters while I managed the household, advising me not to rush into finding a job and to spend more time caring for her at the hospital. Later, my mother-in-law's condition worsened, leaving her bedridden, and my son Jiang Huiting was preparing for the college entrance exams. It became even more impossible for me to go back to work, as I needed to stay home to take care of both the elderly and the young. When filling out college applications after the Gaokao, I asked my son what he had in mind. He said he wanted to study finance and become as successful as his father, rather than ending up like me, a lifelong freeloader at home. After that day, I was in a daze all afternoon, unsure whether the choices I'd made over the years were right or wrong. By then, Ezra Jiang had already resigned to start his own business, and his career was flourishing. He came home later and later, and every time he got drunk at social events, it was Lena Ji who brought him back. I knew Lena Ji had been working with Ezra Jiang all along, but I'd never visited his company. Whenever I suggested going, he'd come up with excuses to refuse. Over time, I simply stopped caring. At the age of 55, my mother-in-law passed away. After her funeral, I felt a sense of relief and planned a trip to Europe with Ezra Jiang. As someone who loves traveling the most, I couldn't even remember how long it had been since I last went out to see the world. For over a decade. My mother-in-law had been confined to her sickbed due to severe illness, and out of love for this family, I willingly trapped myself in this four-walled prison named home for just as long. But then my son came to me and said, "Mom, Mingming is pregnant. Now that grandma is gone and you don't have much to do, come help us take care of Mingming and the baby." Mingming is my son's wife. Hearing that I was about to become a grandmother, though disappointed that I couldn't fulfill my travel plans with Ezra Jiang, I packed my bags and went to my son's home. As Ezra Jiang put it, traveling, there will be plenty of time for that later. But the most crucial years are these first few with your grandson. Once he grows up, you can go wherever you want. While taking care of my daughter-in-law and grandson, I tried my best to be a reasonable mother-in-law, always putting my daughter-in-law first. Even when conflicts arose between my son and his wife, I sided with her. But just when I had finally raised my grandson to elementary school age, my son wanted to send me to a nursing home. Looking at the son I had raised with so much hardship, I was heartbroken. "Your father and I are doing just fine. Even if you don't support us in our old age, we don't need to go to a nursing home." My son, Jiang Huiting, rolled his eyes impatiently. "Dad is getting older, and he deserves to pursue his own life. You can't be so selfish as to tie him to you forever." Only then did I realize that while I was dutifully attending to my mother-in-law's paralyzed bedside in the hospital and painstakingly managing my son's diet and tutoring at home, Lena Ji had gradually risen from being Ezra Jiang's assistant to becoming his right-hand woman, and had remained unmarried and childless for over 20 years for his sake. How laughable that I once even considered introducing Lena Ji to my university professor's son, who had returned from studying abroad. What did Ezra Jiang say at the time? He said, "Lena has her own ideas. She's different from you. She's very career-driven. You just focus on taking care of the household. There's no need to meddle in other matters." At that time, to make up for his debt to Lena Ji, Ezra Jiang not only gave her 10% of the company's shares but had long tacitly acknowledged her as Mrs. Jiang within the company. Meanwhile, I, the legitimate Mrs. Jiang hidden away at home, had long been completely forgotten. Hearing my son's accusations against me and the grievances and hardships he and his father had endured with Lena Ji over the years, my heart felt as if it were being torn apart. Finally, standing coldly at the nursing home door, my son said, "Don't worry, you're my mother, and no matter what, I won't abandon you." But Dad is different. He's worked hard all these years. He has the right to pursue his own happiness, and only a relationship of equals can be called love. Now that I've been reborn, I must seize this second chance given by heaven. In this life, I will no longer live for anyone else. Returning home from work, Ezra Jiang was still not there. Just like in my previous life, recently, he had been having some tension with a leader at the company. To avoid giving the other party any leverage, he worked overtime every day until very late. I called my best friend Juju. "Are you free tomorrow? Come with me to the hospital. Before entering the operating room, Juju held my hand and asked, "Myra, are you sure about this? Are you really not going to tell Ezra Jiang?" "No need, I'll give him the divorce papers before I leave." I don't know why I was still sweet as honey with Ezra Jiang a few days ago, but today I suddenly had to get an abortion and break up. However, as my best friend, no matter what decision I make, she supports me. Lying on the cold operating table, I carefully felt the pain beneath me. I wanted to firmly remember this pain. I would never repeat the mistakes of my past life again. Yesterday, my boss told me that the overseas assignment is final, and I must report to Singapore in at most 2 months. Before leaving, I need to settle my personal affairs in advance. I took a week off to recover at Juju's place. Ezra Jiang only called me once on the first day when he noticed I hadn't come home, and I made up a random excuse to brush it off. After that, he never asked about my situation again. It seems the first child that Ezra Jiang kept talking about wasn't actually that important to him after all, since the pregnancy was still in its early stages and my health was good. I had mostly recovered by the time I returned to work on Monday. At that point, there were still 45 days left before I left Demon City. Ezra Jiang sent me a text. "Myra, my mom's birthday is coming up. Help me pick out a gift and try to send it over by this week." Looking back at the last record, it was still a month ago, his boss's birthday, and he asked me to help pick out a gift. I sneered coldly. In my past life, it was the same. From the start of our relationship, whether it was my mother-in-law's birthday, holidays, socializing with relatives back home, or the social obligations with Ezra Jiang's colleagues and superiors, every time it was just Ezra Jiang giving an order, and I would handle everything. Yet, in front of my mother-in-law and the relatives back home, I never received a single word of appreciation. They only praised Ezra Jiang for his filial piety, and his colleagues and superiors only acknowledged his gestures. Back then, I always thought that as a married couple, we were one. I didn't mind outsourcing his filial duties or social obligations. Since I was good at it, I just did it. But then, all these household matters naturally became my sole responsibility. I replied with okay and then ignored the other person, focusing on my work. After a week of rest, a lot of work had piled up. Before going abroad, I needed to wrap things up neatly. That would be worthy of my boss's trust. When I returned home from working late, as soon as I opened the door, I saw Lena G wearing an apron, carrying a bowl of soup from the kitchen, while Ezra Jiang sat on the sofa with his eyes closed, resting. Lena G didn't disturb him. Instead, she placed the bowl of soup on the nearby coffee table and skillfully massaged Ezra Jiang's temples with gentle hands. What a heartwarming scene. TSK, what a pity. The lady of this house is now me, disturbed by the sound of me changing shoes. The two finally noticed my presence. "Myra, why are you back? It wasn't what you think just now." I looked at Ezra Jiang expressionlessly. "What, can't I return to my own home? And what exactly do you think I'm imagining?" Lena G nervously twisted the apron on her body, tears welling up in her eyes but not quite falling. "Brother Ezra, maybe I should be the one to explain to sister-in-law." Ezra Jiang looked at me with displeasure, his eyes filled with disappointment. "Myra, Lena is my aunt's daughter. How could your thoughts be so filthy?" Taking off my coat and changing into the house slippers by the door, I crossed my arms. From the moment I walked in until now, I've only said one sentence. I don't see what's so filthy about it. Lena G's face flushed with shame and indignation as she removed her apron. "It's all my fault. I shouldn't have taken it upon myself to come up and make soup for brother Ezra just because I saw he's been working overtime lately and hasn't been eating well. I've disturbed you, sister-in-law. I'll leave now." Ezra Jiang opened his mouth to try to stop her but ultimately said nothing. Watching Lena G flee in a panic like a startled rabbit, even nearly putting her shoes on the wrong feet, I struggled to hold back my laughter. How had I never noticed in my past life that she was such a master of playing the innocent? With a loud bang, as the door slammed shut, Ezra Jiang finally couldn't take it anymore. "Now you're satisfied," he snapped. I ignored him and went to the kitchen to heat up a glass of milk for myself. Ezra Jiang started shouting this time, even calling me by my full name. "Myra-shan, don't you realize you're about to become a mother? How can you still come home from work so late, just like in my past life?" Whenever Ezra Jiang was in the wrong, he would find something else to criticize me about, making me feel guilty and upset. It seemed as though this way, he could maintain the upper hand in our relationship. While his own minor mistakes would be brushed aside as if they were nothing, I don't want to confront him just yet. After all, he still has a sum of my money. Once I've sorted everything out, we'll settle all these accounts together. Perhaps sensing that I was different from before, Ezra Jiang uncharacteristically didn't press me relentlessly to back down. Instead, he gently wrapped his arms around me from behind as I lay on the bed. Myra, you don't know, my aunt and uncle died early. And Lena is their only daughter. I treat her like my own sister. I gently pushed his hand away. My stomach feels a bit heavy. It's uncomfortable. Seeing that I didn't take the opportunity to back down, Ezra Jiang stopped trying to coax me and quickly fell asleep with his back turned to me. In the darkness, I opened my eyes. So, Lena Ji had come to the Magic City this early. Ezra Jiang and the others had really kept me in the dark. After Ezra Jiang's previous boss was transferred, he never got along well with the current one, so he had always wanted to start his own business. But starting a business requires money. In my previous life, to support him, I not only used up all my savings but also helped him borrow money from friends and family, including 1 million yuan that was my mother's retirement fund. In this life, without my help in borrowing money, it's uncertain whether Ezra Jiang's company can even get off the ground. Unlike me, Ezra Jiang comes from a rural background. He's the golden phoenix that flew out of his family. It's already a stretch that others don't ask him for money, let alone lend him funds to start a business. But these are no longer my concerns. I need to find a way to get Ezra Jiang to withdraw the money he invested in the stock market. After all, it's our shared property. As for this house, initially my mother sold an old, small apartment to help us with the down payment. To show sincerity, Ezra Jiang voluntarily suggested not adding his name to the property, so the deed only has my name on it. Over the past 2 years, the mortgage has basically been paid from my housing provident fund, and he hasn't contributed a single cent. To keep things simple, we bought a fully furnished apartment, and after moving in, we just added some furniture and appliances. At the time, Ezra Jiang said many couples argue over renovations, and he trusted my taste. So most of these items were purchased with my money. If there's anything in this house that Ezra Jiang spent money on, it's probably that high-end sound system and a coffee machine. After all, those are his 2 favorite things. Back then, I still thought I had found a husband who didn't fuss over things, and I was deeply moved by my own perception for a long time. Now, I really want to slap myself silly, so it wouldn't be too much for me to take matters into my own hands and secretly sell this house. Right, for the next few days, I was busy wrapping up the projects at hand, completely overwhelmed. Just before leaving work, my boss specially ordered dinner and coffee for me. Myra, you're leaving in just a month. There's no need to push yourself so hard. Rubbing my sore lower back. Annie, I don't want people gossiping about you after I'm gone. It's just these few things left. It'll be over in a couple of days. Surprisingly, Ezra Jiang, who's been giving me the cold shoulder, actually came to pick me up after work today. A rare occurrence. When I got to the garage and saw Lena Ji in the passenger seat, I raised an eyebrow, then opened the back door and got in. Seeing the coffee in my hand, Ezra Jiang glanced at me through the rearview mirror. Myra, you're pregnant now. You should quit coffee for the time being. It's not good for the baby. I pretended not to hear and lowered my head to look at my phone. Lena Ji, sitting in the passenger seat, suddenly spoke up. Is it because I'm sitting in the front that's making sister-in-law unhappy? Maybe I should switch seats with her. That's what she said. But she remained firmly seated, not even making a move to unbuckle her seatbelt. Before Ezra Jiang could speak, I looked up and replied, no need. This is the safest spot. I'm fine sitting here. Lena Ji's eyes instantly reddened. Sis, are you still upset about what happened that day? Ezra and I grew up together, and I'm used to doing these things. It was my fault for not noticing your feelings. If it bothers you, I won't see Ezra anymore. Ezra Jiang quickly spoke up to console her. Your sister-in-law is pregnant. Just let her sit in the back. Didn't I tell you long ago that your sister-in-law isn't the petty type, right, Myra? Lena Ji just bit her lip, staring at me with reddened eyes, looking like she wouldn't relent until I nodded. Not wanting to listen to these two's hypocritical talk, I interrupted Ezra Jiang. Did the stocks we bought make any money? What made you think of asking about that? Our company is planning to allocate some shares to employees recently, and I'm thinking of buying a few. As you know, our company's performance has been quite good lately. And there's a significant discount for internal purchases. Ezra Jiang studied finance, so a small portion of our household savings is with me, while the majority is managed by him. Glancing at me through the rearview mirror, he asked, "How much are you planning to buy?" I looked at Lena G sitting in the passenger seat. The implication obvious. Lena G's eyes instantly turned even redder, like a rabbit with pink eye. Ezra Jiang glanced at her and said bluntly, "Lena is one of us. No need to hold back." Hearing this, Lena G immediately showed the coyness of a young girl, her gaze toward me brimming with unconcealed smugness. Pretending not to notice, I casually remarked, "We probably have about $1 million in the stock market right now. Just give me half of that first." Perhaps considering my pregnancy, or maybe wanting to ease our relationship, Ezra Jiang nodded in agreement. But later I realized I had still thought too highly of him. The reason Ezra Jiang agreed so readily was, first, because our company's shares were indeed profitable, and second, because he wanted me to find a job for Lena G at the company. Before the money was in my hands, I naturally pretended to agree, then immediately deleted Lena G's resume. Just an ordinary bachelor's degree, no special skills, no impressive work experience. Without connections, there's no way you can get into our company. A reliable agent I contacted earlier told me he already has a potential buyer in mind, but they want to see the property first before making a decision. I tried to recall, in my past life, Ezra Jiang seemed to have a short business trip scheduled for this weekend. I'll arrange it for then. And I'll move out at the same time. To sell the house quickly, I offered the agent a price several thousand below market value. Plus, when I bought it, the floor, orientation, and layout were the best in our complex. I'm confident the buyer will decide immediately after seeing it. Sure enough, when we got home in the evening, Ezra Jiang mentioned his upcoming business trip. I took the opportunity to remind him about buying company shares, suggesting it would be best if he could transfer the money to me by this Friday. During this period, every time Ezra Jiang drank and couldn't drive, it was Lena G who brought him back. At first, she would act a bit embarrassed, and Ezra Jiang would offer a few words of explanation, but after a couple of times, neither of them paid me any mind. Not that I cared, of course. That day, the bag Lena G placed on the shoe cabinet gave me a sense of déjà vu. Noticing a small scratch near the base of the strap, I remembered. This was the bag Ezra Jiang gave me when he received his first year-end bonus, a medium-sized LV Neverfull in the classic design. Once, I took this bag to my cousin's house, and her child accidentally scratched it with something. Since then, it had been gathering dust in the cabinet. Seeing me stare at the bag lost in thought, Lena G feigned shyness and said, "I told brother Ezra I couldn't possibly use such an expensive bag, but he said a bag is a woman's second face. Having a nice one ensures you won't be looked down on at work or in social settings." The look in their eyes was filled with undisguised smugness and provocation, even more intense than before. I simply said "oh," then returned to the bedroom, leaving Lena G alone in the living room to deal with the completely drunk Ezra Jiang. Once in the bedroom, my first priority was to check on my precious belongings. Thankfully, apart from the LV bag, all the other bags I bought myself were still there. If Ezra Jiang dared to give away any of my treasures as gifts, I would go out there and tear him apart right now. Just like the previous times, Lena G placed Ezra Jiang in the study, which suited me perfectly. Tomorrow is Friday, and I urged Ezra Jiang to transfer the money to me as soon as possible. Tomorrow is the deadline for the company to finalize the share purchase and make the payment. In the afternoon, seeing the over $1 million deposited into my bank account, I couldn't help but feel elated. I remember that over the years, the total amount I gave to Ezra Jiang was less than $800,000. I never expected to make such a profit. Though it's possible Ezra Jiang added a significant amount himself, but I still took it with a clear conscience. After all, it's marital property. On Saturday, as I watched Lena G bustling around the house, helping Ezra Jiang pack for his business trip, I sat on the sofa browsing travel guides. I had mostly wrapped up my work at the company. Once the house matter was settled, I planned to take my mom on a trip to Europe before heading to Singapore. "Myra, do you have any other ties for Ezra?" "That's all there is. What should we do then?" "I don't think any of these ties match Ezra's linen suit very well, then just change his outfit. Lena G came out of the wardrobe with a displeased expression and entered the study where Ezra Jiang was handling some matters. "Ezra," she said, "I think you're being too frugal. No matter what you say, you're still a director at a major company. Just look at the outdated styles of the clothes and ties in your wardrobe. It's really embarrassing to go out for business meetings like this." Her voice wasn't deliberately lowered, just loud enough for me to hear clearly from the living room. Ezra Jiang's suits are all classic styles I had custom-made at brand stores. Whether it's the material or craftsmanship, they're top-notch, and the price is much higher than the ready-made ones hanging in department stores. As for the ties, each one is a carefully selected designer piece to match his outfits. How could they possibly be embarrassing? This Lena G, does she really think her taste is superior just because she's carrying a second-hand LV? I wonder what Ezra Jiang whispered to her that made Lena G come out of the study with a dark expression. When I saw her putting a pack of pure white cotton socks into Ezra Jiang's suitcase, the corner of my mouth twitched upward. Such exquisite taste, truly one of a kind. Before leaving, Ezra Jiang sat down beside me. "Myra, when I return from this business trip, can we talk?" I glanced at Lena G behind him, looking nervous and eavesdropping openly with perked ears. "All right, we'll talk when you get back." Ezra Jiang hesitated. "Myra, the doctor said a pregnant woman's mood greatly affects the child's future personality. I don't want you to be unhappy." "I'm not unhappy, I'm doing fine, don't worry about me. How about I bring my mom here to take care of you? I've heard that the later stages of pregnancy can be quite tough. No need to go through all that trouble. My mom said she'll come to take care of me." Under Lena G's repeated urging, Ezra Jiang finally left the house with his suitcase in tow. I immediately called my best friend Juju to come help me move, promising to treat her to a meal. Juju had initially spoken well of Ezra Jiang a few times, but after learning about Lena G's existence, she firmly took my side. She even declared that if I really couldn't find a buyer for this house, she would take it over herself, just to minimize my future entanglements with that scumbag. Over the weekend, after the agent showed the house to potential buyers, one of them was so satisfied they wanted to pay the deposit on the spot. Before accepting the deposit, I frankly told them that this house was my premarital property and that I was selling it below market price because I was getting divorced. While the transaction was legally sound, I couldn't guarantee that there wouldn't be any trouble in the future. If they were concerned, I completely understood. The buyer purchased it as an investment, not for personal use, and assured me they didn't mind as long as the property was legally sound. Dealing with straightforward people is always efficient. After signing the contract, they generously advanced me a portion of the payment to help relieve my financial pressure. Under normal procedures, it would take 15 working days to complete the transfer after my house was released from the bank's lien, but I couldn't wait that long, so I leveraged a friend's connection to expedite the filing process. On Wednesday, Ezra Jiang returned from a business trip to find he couldn't open his front door. He called me to ask what was going on. I told him the water pipe at home burst, flooding the house and requiring repairs. So I'd be staying at Juju's place for a few days, and he'd have to figure out his own accommodation. I initially thought Ezra Jiang would be angry, but to my surprise, he simply replied with "got it" and hung up the phone, even though it was an expedited filing. The property transfer would still take 5 business days to process. During this time, I was constantly distracted, worried that something might go wrong. It's true, whatever you fear most is bound to happen. In my previous life, when I was pregnant, my mother-in-law used her poor health as an excuse and didn't come to Shanghai until after the baby was born. This time, she actually took the initiative to come to Shanghai to take care of me. It's truly a miracle. Ezra Jiang originally wanted me to pick her up, but I said I was busy and told him to figure it out himself. Just as I guessed, in the end, it was Lena G who picked her up, since there was no room at our place and my mother-in-law refused to stay in a hotel. Ezra Jiang had no choice but to arrange for her to stay at Lena G's place in Shanghai. Learning that Lena G lived in a fairly well-located apartment, Juju's eyes darted around. Can Lena G afford such an expensive place? I bet it's from that guy Ezra Jiang. Whatever, as long as it's not my money. Whoever wants to pay can pay. Juju wasn't happy. Who says? Strictly speaking, this is your shared marital property. Every penny of Ezra Jiang's salary is 50% yours. Don't be naive. Though I didn't care much about the few thousand in monthly rent, Juju's words did remind me. I asked the real estate agent who helped me sell my house to look into it, and it turns out the house Lena G is living in actually belongs to Ezra Jiang. The house was bought a year ago, shortly after we got married. Although Ezra Jiang bought it alone, legally speaking, 50% of it should rightfully belong to me. My mother-in-law came for 2 or 3 days, and I didn't go to see her, which made her very unhappy, so Ezra Jiang gave me a call. Myra, you've gone too far. If you didn't want to prepare a birthday gift for my mom, you should have just said so. Why did you promise me in the first place? If my mom hadn't mentioned it when she came to Shanghai, I wouldn't even have known about it. Don't you know that pregnancy makes you forgetful for 3 years? I've been really absent-minded lately. You should have reminded me. Taking a deep breath, Ezra Jiang suppressed his anger and said, Myra, do you remember? I told you we'd have a serious talk when I got back. Is there some misunderstanding between us? There's no misunderstanding, but if you want to talk, let's talk. Next Saturday then. Didn't you tell your boss about the pregnancy? Why are they still assigning you so much work? Hearing the dissatisfaction in Ezra Jiang's tone over the phone, I inexplicably felt a bit angry. Please don't interfere with my work. Otherwise I won't have time to talk with you next week either. Perhaps not wanting to argue with a pregnant woman, Ezra Jiang compromised, but on one condition, that I make time to visit Lena G to see my mother-in-law. I directly refused. Finally, Wednesday arrived, and the agent, the buyer, and I successfully completed the property transfer at the housing exchange. Seeing the account balance in my bank card, the weight in my heart was finally lifted. Friday was also the day agreed with the buyer to hand over the house. After handing over the house, I packed up Ezra Jiang's belongings, called for a courier, and had them sent to Lena G's address. They should arrive tomorrow. As for the apartment Ezra Jiang secretly bought, it's small and not in a prime location, just close to the subway. The price wasn't high when he bought it, totaling only 4 or 5 million, and it was purchased with a mortgage. The down payment was just over 1 million. So my share would only be a few $100,000. Coincidentally, the family car is registered under my name, so let's just call it even. On Saturday, I printed out 2 copies of the divorce agreement sent by the lawyer, signed my name, and went to meet Ezra Jiang. When I arrived at the agreed-upon Western restaurant and saw who was waiting at the table, my face darkened. Whoever heard of bringing your mother and a cousin, a fake one at that, to a serious talk with your wife? I didn't go over and just called Ezra Jiang to ask what this meant. Wasn't this supposed to be an opportunity for you to apologize to Mom? Ezra Jiang whispered into the phone. Both my mother-in-law and Lena G saw me immediately and knew Ezra Jiang was on the phone with me at that moment. One of them stared at me with a stern expression. Another person was holding her mother-in-law's arm with one hand, whispering something into her ear, and the mother-in-law's face visibly darkened further. I coldly said to Ezra Jiang on the phone, if that's how you're going to be, then there's nothing left for us to discuss. I'll send the divorce agreement to your email. If you find no issues with it, sign it and mail it back to me. After speaking, without even glancing at the people at the table, I turned and walked out of the restaurant without looking back. What divorce agreement? Myra, what are you talking about? Ezra Jiang could no longer control his voice as he hurried after me. I got into the taxi and immediately called my mom, saying I had something important to discuss with her and asked her not to hang up, fearing that Ezra Jiang and my mother-in-law might speak to her first. To my surprise, my mom, who was playing mahjong at the community center, was completely uncooperative. She simply replied, "We'll talk when you get here," and hung up on me. By the time I rushed over in a panic, my mom was sitting alone at the entrance of the neighborhood, wiping away tears. Seeing her like that, I regretted not telling her earlier and waiting until the trip to bring it up. Who would have thought the first thing my mom said when she saw me was, "Where is that bastard Ezra Jiang now?" Mom, don't listen to what he said, let me explain properly. My mom was furious. Her eyes red as she glared at me. What's there to explain? He's driven my daughter to the point of divorce. What possible explanation could he have? Myra, don't be afraid if you want a divorce. Mom supports you. Mom, I've already called your aunts, your younger aunt, second aunt, third aunt, eldest uncle's wife, and second uncle's wife, and also notified those brats. Once they arrive, we'll go confront that Jiang family together. Do they really think a widow and her child are easy to bully? Mom, For the first time since my rebirth, tears streamed down my face as I hugged this petite woman, who stood a head shorter than me, crying uncontrollably. I shouldn't have doubted my mom. Since childhood, she's always supported me unconditionally. How could she possibly blame me because of a few words from exI? I only blame myself for telling her too late, ignoring the phone that was almost blown up by exI's calls. I booked a private room in a mahjong parlor and told them everything. About discovering exI and Lena G's affair, and the property exI bought behind my back, except for the part about my rebirth. My eldest aunt has a fiery temper and immediately wanted to drag my cousin to confront exI, but I stopped them. When they found out I had already sold the house and that most of the family's cash was with me, my relatives finally calmed down a bit. Only my mother looked at me pitifully and asked, "Myra, why do you want to go abroad? How long will you be gone?" I knew what my mother was worried about, so I reassured her, "If things go well, I'll settle there. I'll go for a year first to see how it is, and if it's good, I'll bring you over to live with me." After much deliberation, I also told her about the abortion. I don't want this matter to reach Mom's ears through exI's mouth again. She would surely be heartbroken. Upon hearing this, the lively private room instantly fell silent. Mom said nothing, gripping my hand tightly. Her lips trembled for a long while, yet no words came out. She simply nodded. Aunt patted her shoulder and comforted, "It's better this way. No more entanglement with that family. Besides, Myra is still young. There will be more chances for children." My mother finally threw herself into my aunt's arms and burst into tears. When exI couldn't reach me and rushed over to my mother's place in a panic, he was met with a torrent of scolding from our entire family. No one listened to his explanations about his relationship with Lena G, and in the end, exI slunk away alone, dejected. During that time, my mother-in-law called me and my mother countless times, but we hung up on every single one. Whether exI signs or not, I am determined to get this divorce. I will file for divorce before I leave. Even if the divorce isn't granted, with me in Singapore and him in China, 2 years of separation will be enough to meet the divorce requirements. I've already handed over all company matters, my flight is booked, and in the remaining week, I'll take my mom on a trip to Europe to fulfill the wishes we both made in my childhood. Louvre, Eiffel Tower, here we come, mother and daughter. Before we boarded the plane, exI kept sending me messages non-stop, and I didn't read a single one. When the flight attendant reminded us to turn off our phones, I saw the latest message from exI in the inbox. My mom got so angry she fell ill. Looking at my mother's excited face beside me, I turned off my phone. exI's perspective, I truly love Myra deeply. I was born in the countryside and came to the big city for university. Seeing my glamorous classmates around me inevitably made me feel inferior. So I could only study hard and secretly vowed to make something of myself in the future, so no one would look down on me. Myra was a junior at my university. One time, I found her library card in the library, and that's how our fate began. She was different from those other girls. When she looked at me, she always met my eyes. Rather than secretly judging whether my clothes and shoes were name brand or if my phone and laptop were the latest models, she always listened to me attentively. When I mustered the courage to confess my feelings to her, I never expected she would say yes. That day was the happiest day of my life. Later, when I started working, I met a boss who appreciated me, and my income grew rapidly. However, it was still far from enough to buy a marriage-worthy home in this city of dreams. Though I never mentioned it, Myra took out a card and said she wanted to marry me. I knew the money inside came from her mother selling an old apartment. Even though Myra didn't mind, I insisted on buying a home before registering our marriage. With only Myra's name on the deed, I believed that one day, I could afford a home for both of us. Little did I know, shortly after our marriage, I received a huge project bonus. Combined with my savings, I finally had over $1 million, enough to buy a home. Even if it was just a small apartment. I originally intended this house as an anniversary gift for Myra. But then my cousin Lena G from my hometown wanted to come to the city to pursue her career. Lena G is the adopted daughter of my aunt and uncle. After they passed away when she was 13, Lena G came to live with our family, and we grew up as close as siblings. I knew Lena G had feelings for me since childhood, but I only saw her as a younger sister. to avoid any conflict between her and Myra, I let her stay temporarily in the apartment I bought. Planning to discuss her long-term arrangements once she settled in, everything was going smoothly, all moving in a positive direction. Myra was even pregnant with our child, but where exactly did things go wrong? Ever since that day when Myra came back from her best friend's house and saw Lena G, it seemed like everything had changed. Before, whenever we had conflicts, Myra would always be the first to reconcile with me, but this time, she actually gave me the cold shoulder for so long. Which had never happened before. I deliberately drove to Myra's company to pick her up after work. Coincidentally, Lena came to my office to bring me dinner, and I couldn't just leave her alone, so I had to bring her along. During that time, my new boss was constantly looking for faults to replace me with his own trusted subordinate. I was swamped with work, but fortunately, Lena G helped me handle the drinking sessions, so I wasn't as overwhelmed. To thank her, I gave her a bag that Myra hadn't used in a long time. I didn't expect this to upset Myra, especially since she has so many bags, and I hadn't seen her carry that one in ages. Myra, who is usually so understanding, actually threw a tantrum over something so trivial. I didn't have the energy to deal with her and just thought I'd talk it out properly after my business trip. Normally, Myra would help me pack my clothes for business trips, but this time she acted as if she didn't notice, out of spite. I let Lena G help me pack instead. When it was time to leave, I still compromised. After all, she's pregnant. I seriously told her we'd have a proper talk when I got back. I didn't even hold it against her when she forgot to send my mom a birthday gift or didn't pick her up from the airport. I specifically arranged for my mom to join us on the day of the talk, hoping to ease the tension between them. Mom insisted on bringing Lena G along. And I didn't object, thinking it'd be better to clear the air and avoid any lingering resentment. Who would have thought that what Myra wanted to talk to me about was actually divorce? Not only that, but she also secretly sold the house. Did she think I would distinguish her premarital assets? If I were after money, I wouldn't have refused to add my name to the property in the first place. After that day, I called Myra countless times and sent her countless messages. But she didn't respond to a single one. I asked Myra's friend to be a mediator, but Juju directly blocked me. When I learned from Myra's aunt that Myra had aborted our child, I knew there was no possibility left between Myra and me. I signed the divorce agreement and mailed it to Myra's divorce lawyer. Later, under my mother's urging, I married Lena G. After marriage, Lena G had no intention of going out to work at all, always finding various excuses to avoid it. Life in the bustling city is incredibly stressful. Besides the mortgage, I have to support my entire family. Within a few years, my mother fell ill, and I couldn't afford to lose my current job. I did everything I could to flatter my current boss, just to keep my job, even if it meant giving my achievements to his trusted subordinates. Every time I came home from overtime work and saw Lena G arguing with my bedridden mother, I felt suffocated. But I can't get divorced, because if I do, there will be no one to take care of my mother. I've always made a point of keeping up with news about Myra through our college classmates. I heard she's doing very well in Singapore. She got promoted in less than 3 years after arriving. By the 4th year, she was married, and I also know she now has a very lovely daughter. Late at night, I sat crying in the car in the garage. Myra and I were supposed to have a child too, but everything changed.